When Adam and Eve first fell into sin, immediately they felt the horrific effects of sin and the fall. But we see that God didn't stop loving them. It's right in that moment that as God is explaining all of the consequences for their sin, that He offers them His grace. He gives them the very first promise of the Savior, that the offspring of the woman would one day crush the head of Satan. And then God does something else that we don't talk about quite as much, but He initiates the very first death on the face of the earth, sacrificing an animal to use its skins to make clothes for Adam and Eve. Clothes that cover their shame, their nakedness, their guilt. It's an incredible picture of God's amazing grace. That word grace is God's unmerited favor towards us. God's unmerited favor towards Adam and Eve. God didn't have to do that. He could have just started all over again without them, but He chose instead to love them because our God is a God of love. It's part of His nature. An incredible picture of God's amazing grace. So right in the middle of their suffering, right in the fall, there's hope, there's peace, there's forgiveness. And so in the middle of our suffering, we also need our hearts to be pointed to a hope that is outside of ourselves. Because if we only look to what we can do for ourselves, like Adam and Eve initially did in trying to cover their sin with leaves that didn't work very well, it will never be enough. We can never fix our brokenness. We can never heal those deep wounds of our souls. And just like Adam and Eve, we need a hope that comes from the Lord.